to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll make note that Val and Steve aren't here tonight. I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Public comments. Do we have anybody for public comments? Wasn't any registered in advance. Anyone? Showing no old business. We'll start into new business. Scott Stillwell, Mid-American Energy Company, request for relocation of the street line. And I see that Scott is here. So Scott, would you mind approaching the, kind of give us a quick summary of what we're looking at here?
Basically what we're doing is we actually have a street light that's been out for some time. It'd be on 4th Street Southeast, right at the intersection. It was right there by the McDonald's and that convenience store. It's on a steel pole, it's 100 watt HPS, and it's been out for quite some time. What I'd like to do is actually move that to the southwest corner of the intersection of 4th Street Southeast and 1st Avenue Southeast. And just put it on the southwest side instead of where it's at now. We'll put it on a wood pole and get rid of that steel pole. Basically, it's going to save time, money, and possible future repairs. It's actually an underground feed coming from the southwest right now, and to dig all that up or rebore another line into that could be a little bit expensive. I know the DOT. I've talked to 2 guys there. They're all for it. All I need is for the city to actually just approve the location, and I need a letter in writing for my company that states that I can do that.
Is there any reason, any comments that we need to make from the
Doug.
chief or Doug?
Doug, you have any comments?
Basically, it looks like a good project for us too, because there's not much in the realm of our utilities that will be impeded by any of the work there, and we're all for helping out. McDonald's parking lot already has really good lighting because they have a lot of their own private lighting over that way too. So actually, I think it'll bring a little bit more light down to that 1st Avenue intersection, which I think is probably needed. And then we do have a business with a parking lot in that area too, so I think it'd be good.
Excellent. Any other questions for Doug or anything? So if no other questions for Scott, I'm looking for a motion to go forward with that.
I'll make a motion, go forward with that.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Diane. And we've got from the reading approval of the relocation of the street light from, do we have the exact addresses on that?
It was from 4th.
From
Southwest corner of the intersection of 4th Street Southeast and 1st Avenue Southeast. It's approximately 32 feet from the center line going west, 23 feet going south from 1st Avenue Southeast, from the center line.
What intersection are you moving it to?
That corner, the southwest corner,
Okay,
from the northeast corner.
So from the southeast to the
northeast.
northeast.
Northeast to the southwest.
Oh, northeast to the southwest?
Yep.
Okay,
Northeast to the southwest.
Yes.
okay, that'd be good.
And do we have that in writing somewhere, or just
Just a map that I brought here. You guys just
Doug's
look at
got
that.
it.
Doug's got the
Yeah.
map, so if we
We'll
need to
clarify that,
clarify
yeah.
the exact address, that stuff. Any other comments on this?
So is that in the Brothers? Is that their corner?
Right on the
Okay,
corner.
all right.
Yep.
Any other discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Seeing none, it passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Next, we'll look at Ben Wolf from Yagi Colby, consideration of authorizing Yagi Colby and Adams Construction to proceed with limited wall and ceiling exposure for assessment of the road walls at the Hampton Public Library. Would you mind, Mr. Wolf, address and give us kind of a summary of what we're looking at here?
Yes, sir. I'll try to give a very brief summary of where we're at this time. If I'm going too long, stop me, or if you'd like more information, please ask. So basically what happened is when Adams Construction was asked to look at a window replacement project, he discovered that there was a bowing in the walls. At that point, I was contacted by Mr. Dunt at the city to perform a structural engineering evaluation of the wall. I came to the site, took a variety of measurements of the plumbness of the walls and of conditions inside and outside, and even up above the ceiling of what was visible without removing finishes. That was the first stage of our engineering investigation. From that, I was able to verify what Adams Construction had noticed, that there was a bowing in the wall, and from analysis of the geometry, it appears that this bowing in the wall is caused by expansion of the clay masonry construction of the wall. So with this thing being on a curve, as that masonry expands, it's restrained by the two stiffer parts of the building and is actually moving outwards because of the clay tile and clay brick expanding. To give you a little background, clay masonry is as small as it's ever going to be when it comes out of the kiln, when it's first constructed, and over time that gains moisture from humidity in the air, from moisture that may get into the wall just because of the porous nature of masonry. So we believe we have an understanding of why this is occurring. So the next step is to determine what we would recommend for correcting the issue. Now, if I had enough information and knew fully the wall construction, we could probably make that recommendation based on what we know now. However, much of the wall is covered with finishes, including plaster on the inside, plaster ceilings. So what we're recommending as a first step as part of our recommendation letter is some additional investigative selective removals of parts of the ceiling and parts of the wall plaster where we can verify the wall construction, verify the roof joist and the floor joist connections to the masonry wall, and determine if this outward movement of the wall may have compromised the joist bearing on the wall. If it was a relatively short bearing on the wall, we could have an issue that would be more of a structural concern, and if it's a long bearing into that wall, where it would be less of a concern. So basically what we're recommending is the next investigative step to determine what the best course forward is. Now, just to briefly summarize, the options moving forward could vary greatly from basically allowing the wall to remain in a bowed condition. And it does appear that it's been in this bowed condition from some time by the generally adequate interior plaster finish and the lack of new cracking since masonry repointing was done, I believe, in 1979. So there's a possibility that this wall is stable in its current condition. And if there's no concerns with the joists that bear into the wall, it may be able to remain with some limited repair work, which may be only limited to reconstruction of the outside veneer masonry at steel lintels over the windows. So that's one option. Now, if we discover conditions are worse behind the existing plaster construction and above the ceilings, or if there's other concerns, that construction or that repair work can become more extensive. So our recommendation is to do this additional investigation to get a good handle on what's needed to move forward and bring the wall into a safe condition.
The steel, this all came from the steel above the windows, right?
Yes.
Because that was deemed needed to be replaced. Is that correct?
I believe that was where the whole discussion of even a window replacement came from, was thinking that, well, as part of replacing the windows, the contractor could replace those steel lintels, which are badly scaled and corroded. And as he was looking, just taking measurements for window replacement, getting a handle on the size of the openings and the geometry, just putting a level against the wall, he noticed that the wall was severely out of level, bowed to the outside, and that's where the further involvement of structural engineering became a recommendation.
And you were over today, the library board, everyone is aware of what, if we start or okay this will impact the library in some way?
Well, no members of the library board were there this afternoon, but the library board president has been kept up to speed, as well as the foundation treasurer, Ron Shermer, I think is the treasurer. He's been kept up to speed too. So all parties are aware that this is happening. I guess what I would propose is to have Adams Construction do the selected areas of demolition for Ben to then take a look at. You know, he talked in his letter here, which is in the pink, about maybe just sending digital photos, but I think that it might be wise to have him present once the holes are open to avoid sending him digital photos and then ultimately having to come down anyway to verify something. I think it'd just be wise to have him look at them in person up front to
You talking
avoid
about
it.
Larry looking at
Well, Larry would cut the holes open, get things ready, and then Ben would actually look at them in person.
it? Is there any damage to the inside walls, or is it pulling the inside with it, or?
That's one thing that is interesting, that it doesn't appear that there's any significant recent damage to those inside walls. However, Kim at the library reviewed some old records that they have of different projects that have gone into the library. And in 1986, the plaster on that wall was bad enough and damaged enough by moisture and cracking that they removed all the plaster from the interior wall and replaced it. So since 1986, there hasn't been significant change to the inside. However, there are a couple of these windows where there's some cracking and deterioration of that material above the windows. It's not something I call severe, but it's something that shows that there has been some ongoing movement. It's not something that's significant enough that I think there's been a lot of recent movement.
In that other report that we got, you said something about widths, W-Y.
Oh,
Is that-
sorry.
is that
That's an
really-
engineering terminology. That's when a masonry wall is constructed, there's multiple layers of brick or multiple layers of masonry construction. So width is just one of those layers. So your outer width would be the veneer that you see on the outside. The inner width would be
And are they attached to
the
each other?
inside. Generally, they are attached to each other by soldier courses that go between one another, or by, for masonry of this era, I wouldn't expect that it would be metal ties, but that is sometimes done. It could be an older metal tie type system. There's a number of ways that a masonry wall is tied together.
Does the curvature of the wall have anything to do with that? Is that somewhat unique to that, or have you seen this in other structures?
The curvature of the wall, in my opinion, does have a lot to do with what we're seeing here in terms of the bowing, because there's these long continuous elements horizontally that are continuous from one end to the other of the arc of the wall. And as those expand, they have nowhere to move at the ends unless they expand outward. We've seen similar conditions in a recent project up in Mason City, a concrete frame school building with clay tile masonry walls, where those masonry walls had actually, with no expansion joints, had expanded enough that they were actually causing concrete spalling. They were breaking up the concrete columns. So there's enough force to this expansion that it can, even clay tile, a fairly light material, we saw it damage concrete. So here what we're just seeing is it's moving where it's got the least resistance, which is that level between the floors where there's no floor to tie it back. There does appear to be some movement at that first floor level, but it appears to be less than it is at the middle of the wall, which makes sense in terms of how we're evaluating this.
Have you had experience with a similar type of structure as far as the rounded?
As far as the rounded in this kind of circumstance, I can't say I've seen a clay tile, clay brick rounded structure just like this one before, but I've seen, I've worked with rounded type structures before, and brick masonry, concrete masonry, clay tile masonry in a number of instances. It is somewhat unique in terms of the actual construction of this wall.
Is the timing of looking at that have anything, is that very important, just with the extreme weather conditions that we've had? I mean, I guess we hadn't really noticed it before this year, is that what was said? Or we thought it's been there for quite a while?
Well, I think that it's been there for a while, but Larry, in trying to put together a rough estimate of replacing the lintels, he noticed it, standing right up close and looking at what he's going to have to do. He's going to have to remove bricks above the lintels to get the lintels out, and he got concerned about if he's removing bricks and with that bow there, he just was concerned that that it was a danger, and so he thought he needed a structural engineer to assess it.
Well, could the weather this year have made it worse or really noticeable, if you want to put it just simply?
I doubt that the weather this year would have had a significant impact. I think really a lot of the summer we saw fairly dry weather, which would have done the opposite thing we'd expect, from the expansion of the masonry. I don't think the weather in recent times would have been a likely contributor. I think extreme weather recently, if that had been the main cause, we'd be seeing more distress in the wall. We'd be seeing more step cracks in the masonry, more distress on the interior plaster. So I think you're right in saying that this may have been a problem that's been there for a long time, but it is something where I'd say, you know, since we have discovered it, you know, we would recommend taking a look at it and determining what to do, partially because there's other work being proposed at the library, you know, the courtyard project, and then window replacements and so forth that may be impacted depending on how severe this condition is, which we don't fully understand yet. And the thing with the steel lintels is as steel starts scaling, you know, as those scales come off, it expands greatly. And as that continues, you're just going to end up with more and more issues and possibly some cracking of the brick where that's an ongoing problem.
And you are aware that the building's on the historic register, so we'd have to take that into account with any work that we do?
Yes.
Okay.
My last comment is, and you talked about working with the library staff to make it as little disruptive and as possible. I mean, so Larry was there with you, Kim was there, so you all have a plan for as little disruption to the library services during this exploratory phase?
Yes.
We're okay with that?
We identified some specific locations
Where
that are.
she saw it, she's aware of what's going on?
Yes.
Okay.
How big of an area do you have to open up?
Well, what we're proposing is an area of about, for starters, and that is a key thing here, because it may require, if we see something that looks bad, we may want Larry to remove a little more within the space that he's going to cordon off. But we're looking at a removal of the ceiling in the basement of only about 16 inches wide by about 30 inches long. So a fairly small removal. That could get a little bit longer to go the full width of the window, and then beyond that some if needed. Up above, we're looking for a similar size window, or similar size opening in the ceiling at the ceiling level above one of the windows. And then down in the wall, at that horizontal band between windows, we're looking for a removal of plaster that's large enough to get a handle on what that frame is doing at the window. And part of what we're recommending is that Larry remove one of the windows and remove part of the frame to where we can get an idea of the full thickness of the wall and how those two masonry widths interact. So whether they're connected by steel connectors, whether they have soldier courses, we expect we can be able to see some of that from the side of the window, and we can see what the true lintel construction is by looking up above. One thing I didn't mention yet, is not mentioned in the report, is Kim was able to locate photos that, I did mention those today, that actually show that exterior wall with the plaster removed. So it answers some of my questions in terms of what's there, in terms of what the construction type is. It shows that it appears to be a clay tile up to about the top of the higher level of windows and brick arches up above, which was a little bit of a surprise to me. It does look like the original lintels were actually a brick masonry arch without steel. So it's possible that that steel you see on the outside was either an addition or it may have just been a steel lintel just for support of the veneer on the outside. So we've learned more just with this visit today, but I think the investigation is still warranted to have the full amount of information to do a full preliminary report.
Take lots of pictures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
With digital photos, I take hundreds.
Any other questions? We'll look for a motion to authorize Yagi Colby Associates and Adam Construction carry out proposed procedure and assessing status of boat wall at the Hampton Public Library.
I would so move.
Jim?
Second.
Dick? To authorize Yagi Colby Associates and Adams Construction to carry out the proposed procedure and assessing status of boat walls at Hampton Public Library. Any discussion or any more questions that we need to talk, or we seeing no questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All against, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Ben.
Consideration of approval of pay request number 3 for work completed on CDBG project at 22 2nd Avenue Northeast in the amount of $10,619.05. Questions on that? I know you told me, but where does this money come from?
This is a federal grant, goes towards these housing rehabilitations, but the local match that the city has to kick in is $30,000 over a 2-year period, so $15,000 on the 2 fiscal years. first of all, there's a target neighborhood that is targeted, and then anybody within that neighborhood can apply, and if they meet the income guidelines, there's minimum low-income guidelines that they have to meet in order to qualify.
And it's just a grant, there's no payback or tax changes?
Well, what there is there, part of this whole process is that homeowner has to agree to have a mortgage. It's actually a promissory note mortgage that gets recorded on the property. And they have to stay in that property for, I think it's like 10 years. If they sell, they have to repay, it's prorated over a 10-year period, so they would have to repay, and we've had that happen. I was just gonna note on this particular one, 22 2nd Avenue Northeast, what you're seeing here is the electrical has now been completed. That was 5,200. Plus, since it's so close to completion, we're only retaining 1% instead of 5%. So we're releasing about $5,419.05 of retainage. So that's where you can come up with the total of $10,619.05. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I've also had comments of other people wanting to, next time that we get this opportunity, to thank you for putting through and getting this done. This has been very helpful to a lot of people. So thank you. Look for a motion to approve this.
I would move we approve pay request number 3 for $10,619.05.
Thank you, Jim. Second.
Second.
Diane. Any other discussion? So motion by Jim, second by Dan to approve pay request number 3 for 22 2nd Avenue Northeast, the amount of $10,619.05. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next one is in consideration of request for pay number 3 for work complete on CDBG project 216 First Street Northeast, an amount of $5,994.40.
This one, as you can see, is just getting underway. Replacement windows were what was completed first, so that's $74.93 minus the retainage of $1498.60. Leaves the amount due for this request $5,994.40.
Any other questions or comments on that? Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Dick?
To approve pay request number 3 on this project at 22 2nd Avenue Northeast.
That has the wrong address on there.
Yeah, it does. It's 216 First Street Northeast. Thank you, Diane.
Oh, you got this purple sheet, it's wrong.
No,
No,
that's
second page.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Jim. So it's a motion by Dick, second by Jim to approve pay request number 3 for the CDBG project at 216 First Street Northeast in the amount of $5,994.40. Any other discussion?
Who seconded that?
I did.
Jim.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Next one we have is the consideration of approval by Clapsaddle Carver Associates proposed by 2013 HMA Overlay Improvement Project contract amendment to include pedestrian ramps. I would like to refer to Mark Crawford, who's in the audience, to kind of bring us up to speed on that, if that's okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. What you have before you tonight in way of this contract amendment, it would be an amendment to our contract with the city of Hampton for the 2013 through 2017 HMA overlay projects. As we looked to repackage and rebid the street overlay projects over the winter months here, Ron and Doug and I discussed the further clarification that's come down really in the last 6 to 9 months from the federal highway, the Iowa DOT related to pedestrian ramp improvements bringing them into compliance with the ADA guidelines. What has happened, in summary, is that Federal Highway and the Iowa DOT have further clarified when it is the responsibility of the agency to make pedestrian ramp improvements for those ramps that are out of compliance. What work that is typically done by a city constitutes having to go in and redo those ramps. Previously, the definition was somewhat vague and somewhat left up to the jurisdiction or the agency that was doing that. But like I said, recently they've made some clarifications in that any maintenance work that is done by a city, it is required that the pedestrian ramps be addressed if they are not in compliance. Maintenance includes asphalt overlays. If you are overlaying a roadway through the area that a pedestrian would be walking, you must make the accommodations, bring the accommodations into ADA compliance. So with that clarification, Ron and Doug and I discussed what needed to be done for the existing projects that were being worked on and looked at in the southwest area of town, in the city's ongoing capital improvement plan to overlay those. This contract amendment is for our time to come up and perform a detailed topographic survey of each of those ramps. And I believe in your packet you have a diagram that indicates the extent of what our survey crews need to gather as far as topographic data in order to design those ramps adequately. And then the other part of the amendment is, of course, our engineering time to design those improvements. And then our intent is to package those into this next round, this next set of bid documents for the overlay projects that'll be completed here this summer. We have been, CGA has been doing quite a few of these in different communities. In fact, we're working with the city of Ames right now on their, what they call their transition plan. Because of the new requirements that need to be met, they are actually specifically targeting blocks of streets that have dozens and dozens of ADA ramps that need to be brought into place. And so this diagram that you have, we worked with the city of Ames to develop that so that there was a standard template for both our survey crews and for, in that case, the city of Ames folks related to the field data. We found it very useful and very helpful, and we even included in our construction documents with the new design of the handicap ramp so the contractors know exactly what they need to be designing into.
Jim?
So this template, this is the four options that we would have on a corner.
Yep.
And it looks like the assumption is that there are sidewalks, and what happened, there is no sidewalk on either one or both sides.
Yep, good question. What they've done is they've clarified if there is a sidewalk that crosses the street and there is no receiving sidewalk on the other side, you have two options. You don't have to address it, you don't have to do any improvements to it, or you can remove it completely. Take the existing sidewalk out. So in the case of the areas we're looking at for the HMA overlay project, there are some of those situations, and in our design then that'll be reflective of, there are some that we are not addressing because there's no receiving sidewalk on the other side.
But it could be at that time, let's say we would decide to put a sidewalk in, I mean, we would be able to work with you
Yep.
on that.
Should there be a sidewalk then put in on the other side, just that piece that goes from the roadway to the longitudinal sidewalk, then that one on the other side would have to be addressed at that time.
Okay.
So we don't have to take it out, we can just leave it the way it is?
Correct.
Is that kind of the approach we're taking?
In all of the ones that we're looking at for this next round of projects, in the areas that we're overlaying, we have, yes, taken that approach. There's only, I think, there's only, I think, one of those that is the case. So the rest of them will be redesigned.
Any other questions? Or
What's the increase, we've heard this figure before, what's the estimated increased cost on an intersection where we have 4 ADA ramps that all have to be changed?
Mark, do you know that?
Yep, I can quickly total that up. For the entire areas that we're looking at, this next round of projects, quantity, is about $12,000 to $14,000 for removal and replacement.
Per intersection?
No, for the whole area, and I should have had that maybe a little bit better quantified. I don't exactly remember how many we're doing. Seems like we're doing, we're doing 12, and then we have 2 proposed in the bid alternate. And of those 12, there's only one intersection that has all 4 quadrants. Most of them are just 2.
That was a big increase in our costs as far as.
Well,
every one of these
and then
projects.
engineering on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this
That's-
4,500 is all the engineering for these? I mean, the
Yes.
ones that were.
Yeah, that we're overlaying this
So then
summer.
The next time we do it, then it'll be same 45, I mean, it'll be.
It's gonna depend on how many there are in the area. If there's only, 6, then the engineering will be less. So we're gonna take it as a one at a time approach, so that we don't, we can more accurately define what the full scope is.
So this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is that yards of sidewalk you gotta tear out or something, or on the picture? It goes away from the intersection?
Those are topographic survey shots. So when our survey crews came up to topo the area, they physically take a elevation shot at each of those points. So we.
And that's for grade down to the road?
Yep, that's right.
Do these shots at all, say, address the sidewalk itself or only the ramp? Let's say that there's too much slope from the sidewalk down to the street. How does that get rectified if the sidewalk has changed?
Backhoe.
That's what'll happen. I can show you an example of a diagram. So what you see here is very similar to the points you see on the diagram you have in front of you. So what we've done is we've collected all the data based on that diagram, the elevations, and then that elevation data helped us determine how far back along this sidewalk
It has to be taken out.
it has to be taken out in order to bring it into compliance.
Is that our cost or the landowner's cost, the sidewalk replacement?
Sorry.
Anything done past this point, as far as condition of the sidewalk, if you have a requirement that if there's settling, and you require homeowners to make those corrections, anything done past that point would be the
Their
homeowner's
responsibility.
Right.
is that, are these homeowners involved? Are they aware of that this may be coming? So if they want to do their sidewalks while this is going on, that
Not
could
yet.
be bid or anything?
Not yet.
Is that something we would want to do, is to make sure the homeowners know it's coming, so
We-
that way?
We could do that.
Because I would, if we're gonna put that nice a sidewalk, which we don't have a choice on, I assume, that we have to do it. It'd sure be nice that if their sidewalks are in disrepair while they're doing it and forming up, that they get their sidewalks done. Doug, do you have a comment on
It might be beneficial before we do that, to find out who gets the bid on the project.
that? Okay.
Because, quantity is savings typically. So once we know who's doing it, we can let the property owners know who's doing our work.
Mhm.
That way they can maybe say, hey guys, can you just finish it and I'll pay you for this X amount? Maybe that contractor would appreciate it, maybe it wouldn't. but the city needs to stay out of that.
We need to stay out of it, but the
Right.
point of it is one of the things I have had people ask about torn up sidewalks and those type of things on city ordinance type deals. So I think letting people know that now's the time that, you know, that from an ordinance point of view, that if we know these torn up sidewalks and no one's done anything about it, if we're gonna put this kind of into it, then the landowner or the property owner ought to know that, hey, you're gonna, I'd rather give them
Yeah.
the summons or the warning before, so they have the opportunity to get it fixed before this is going on. At least that's what I've asked, or people have asked me about, hey, the guy's sidewalk's all tore up, how come no one's fixing, how come we're not notifying him of it?
That's a whole different animal that,
Yes.
has been talked about
But-
many times
yeah.
over the years.
But I think for this purpose, we can, before we go into construction, we can either
Yeah.
send a letter or do a door
Right.
hanger,
I
alerting
think,
them,
yeah,
hey, your
we'll just let
sidewalk's
them know
part
we're
of it.
gonna do it, and this is
Mhm.
roughly the time frame we're gonna do it, and this
Yeah,
is.
especially if they're,
usual.
especially if they're maybe thinking that they might replace the sidewalks. and they
Right.
do it all at
Just
once,
the
'cause
point
I-
of it
There
is-
could be savings to them.
Yeah, 'cause
There
when
could
I
be savings.
replaced my sidewalks years ago, I have properties either side of the alley, I contacted the city, and then they replaced the sidewalk across the alley too, so it was all one nice
I would
unit,
just-
and that was a
Yep.
nice thing, I think, a good thing to
I would
do.
hate to have us notify them a year later that they need to do their sidewalks when they could have gotten it cheaper. Just, you know, hey, just be aware that, you know, this would be your time, if you're gonna get something cheap, this would have been your time to have done it.
Definitely,
It's a kind of a
think
public
letting them know,
service.
but like I said, we let them know that this is who, and this is when,
Mhm.
and this is what, and then anything after that, though, their communication between them and the contractor is theirs, and there's.
We are not taking any
Right,
responsibility for
But
it.
the notification, I think, yeah, is a good idea.
Any other comment, Dick?
Yeah, I have another question on these four options here. It looks to me like three of these four options are accommodating handicap ramps two directions. Okay. What determines which of those styles are used? And is one style more expensive to put in than the other? One looks like it has more of the ADA, the bumpers, the surface.
That exhibit was really just put together to try to cover all of the options or all of the possibilities that our survey crews might see when they get out in the field. That's not a exhibit to say, contractor, you have the choice to put it in like 1, 2, 3, or 4. What dictates how they'll go back is the geometry that they're in now. If the geometry is that they have now is similar to the one in the lower right-hand corner, then that's the way that it would be designed to be put back. In Hampton's case, none of those in that particular case exist. They're all your typical cross,
Like in the lower left.
like in the lower left. So,
The one at the Windsor corner, I think it's got one of them and it's centered in between, it's a downtown.
It does.
It's centered, it's not like the lower left, it's more like the lower right, but it's narrow or smaller.
which intersection is that?
Well, at the Windsor Theater corner,
Federal and,
Federal.
Federal and First,
It's not, it's commercial, yeah.
it's commercial though.
Yeah, and that's not in our area for our overlays.
Correct.
Can you go
Yeah.
back to the, you said you have 12 of these intersections you're doing, and it's only gonna cost $12,000 or $13,000 for, is that for the, put these in?
There's 12 ramps
Okay.
that we're doing. And, yeah, the estimate that I have, not including the engineering agreement that you have in front of you, the construction estimate is about 12 to, let's say 13 or 14,000.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Yep.
So, in the sidewalk, I mean, because you guys know how far back you have to replace the sidewalk too already, so it's basically $1,000 for each one of these things that you have to redo.
Yeah, approximately.
And that's just based, your guess, and you have to find the contractor.
Yep.
that says
Yeah,
yes.
we'll bid it. Yep.
plus the
Plus the
Yeah,
engineering.
the engineering
Yep.
is, yeah.
So it kind of feels to me like we've got some sort of government mandate that's causing us to spend a lot more money. Do we have any other options? If we don't abide by this, we don't get federal monies to help improve the streets, where are we at?
Well, eventually the DOT will strictly force us into doing things, and they have options such as withholding road use tax funds. things like that. So they have a big club that they can whack you with.
Doug, I would like to know that any of these sidewalks that we're going, I don't know the locations, but if we can't, if a wheelchair can't go down those sidewalks, I'd like to know as soon as possible, because I'd like to call the landowner and just kind of tell them that this is coming. And, you know, because if they don't fix then, you know, what are their options? Do we have to take out the sidewalks? Or, I mean, I don't know what the concepts are, but to put these beautiful intersections into a torn up sidewalk that you can't go down.
I think if you're gonna go to that extent, you all will need to prepare yourselves to then, if you're gonna do that, we need to enforce the sidewalk ordinance, period, throughout the entire community. I don't think we can pick and choose, you know, which one, so to speak, but that's entirely up to you guys to decide how you wanna do it. I would suggest contacting, maybe Waverly. They have a program in place. We have an ordinance and could put a program in place. We'll do whatever council wants us to do with that. There's a lot to talk about.
It's bigger than this, okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's very big.
Okay. But back to your point, Dick, we don't have a choice. If we're going to get the federal money, we have choices, but.
If the press will let me go off the record with this comment, but we've been snubbing our nose at this to the point where we can't do it any longer. Because they've tightened you know, he said before they were vague, but the DOT has tightened it up, and to a point now where we can't just snub our nose at it anymore. We have to start doing it.
So it really pushes us over the edges when an intersection is involved, if it's between blocks.
When we're doing overlays.
Right, doing overlays, it's not a problem, but once we involve an intersection,
yes,
we're stuck.
Yeah, you have to bring them into compliance.
Yeah, if you have a mid-block crossing that is within an area of maintenance work, that you are doing, that would also, that maintenance work through that area that a pedestrian would cross the road.
I'm not sure we have.
That's a definition.
Do we have any?
I don't believe we do.
Okay, but if it's an affected area.
Well, personally, I don't have anything against putting in the handicap ramps. It's not just wheelchairs, walkers, and I mean, people, and I think we need to comply with that. No question.
Any other questions, comments? We're looking then for a motion.
To approve this 4,500.
The amendment, proposed amendment of the contract to the 2013 HMA overlay improvement project, including pedestrian ramps, which will be not only the 4,500, but also to include the ramps, which is this 12 to 15 when they go out for bid. So it's twofold. One, there's an engineering side, and second of all would be the ramps.
Well, I would move that we approve the proposed amendment for the 213 HMN overlay improvement project, including the pedestrian ramp, so I would move that.
So I got a motion by Jim, second by Jay. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark's gonna join us in a minute here, preparing the resolution, so.
Okay, approval of the claims submitted by staff. We reviewed them. Approved the claims submitted by staff in the amount of $162,115.69.
I would move we approve the claims.
Thank you, Jim. Second by
Second.
Diane. Thank you both for taking the time to review those. Muchly appreciated. Motion by Jim, second by Diane to approve the claims as submitted by staff in the amount of $162,1569. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We'll proceed on now to consideration, approval, adoption of resolutions. So resolution 2014-15, which is this HMA overlay and pedestrian ramp improvement project. Resolution ordering construction of certain public improvements and fixing a date for hearing therein and taking of bids therefore. Refer comments now to Mark Crawford if we have any, and then we'll have the reading by City Manager Ron Dunn.
Okay, thank you. What you have before you on this item is simply the resolution that orders construction and authorizes the clerk to publish notice of hearing and letting for 2013 HMA overlay project and pedestrian ramp improvements. Our intent is to get the notice published, to receive the bids on or about April 8th, I believe, and then be at your April 10th meeting for the public hearing, which is what this resolution is setting.
Any questions? We'll have the reading of the resolution by City Manager Ron Dunn.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 2014-05, resolution ordering construction of certain public improvements and fixing a date for hearing thereon and taking bids therefore. Where it's deemed advisable and necessary to construct certain public improvements described in general as the 2014 HMA overlay and pedestrian ramp improvement project, and has caused to be prepared plans, specs, and form a contract together with estimate of costs, which are now on file in the office of the City Clerk for public inspection for the construction of public improvements, plans, specs, form a contract that are deemed suitable for the making of public improvements. And whereas final grades have been established by ordinance consistent with the plans for all street improvements, including the proposed construction. Whereas before plans, specs, form a contract, estimate of cost may be adopted, and contract for the construction of public improvements is entered into, it is necessary pursuant to Chapter 26 of the Code of Iowa to hold a public hearing and to advertise for bids. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Hampton, Iowa, it's hereby determined that it's necessary and advisable to construct certain public improvements described in general as 2014 HMA overlay and pedestrian ramp improvement project in the manner set forth in the plan, specs, form of contract above referred to. The cost thereof to be paid in accordance with the provisions as set out in the published notice of hearing and letting, public improvements being more generally described as follows. Proposed work will involve furnishing the labor, equipment, and materials necessary for constructing 2014 HMA overlay and pedestrian ramp improvement projects in Hampton, Iowa, as shown in the plan specs for project number 1633. That the amount of the bid security to accompany each bid shall be an amount which shall conform to the provisions of the notice to bidders approved as part of the specifications. Be it further resolved, the City Clerk be and is hereby directed to publish notice to bidders once in the Hampton Chronicle, a legal newspaper printed wholly in the English language, published at least once weekly, and having general circulation in this city. Publication shall not be less than 4 clear days nor more than 45 days prior to April 8th, 2014, which is hereby fixed as the date for receiving bids. The bids will be filed prior to 10 o'clock a.m. on such date. City Council hereby delegates the city engineer or his designee for the duty of receiving, opening, and tabulating bids for construction of the project. Bids shall be received and opened as provided in the public notice, and the result of the bids shall be considered at the meeting of this council on April 10th, 2014 at 6 o'clock p.m. Be it further resolved, the City Clerk be and is hereby directed to publish notice of hearing once in such newspaper. The publication shall not be less than 4 clear days nor more than 20 days prior to the date hereafter fixed as the date for public hearing on the plan, specs, form of contract, estimate of cost for the project. The hearing is set to be at 6 o'clock p.m. on April 10th, 2014. Thank you, Mayor.
I'll look for a motion to approve and adopt resolution 2014-05.
I'd make a motion to approve and adopt resolution 2014-05.
Motion by Diane, second by?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jim. Motion by Diane, second by Jim to approve and adopt resolution 2014-05. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we'll take a roll call vote. Crowley.
Aye.
Lukensmeyer.
Aye.
Hickman.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Hagenbeck and Harms are not here, so the motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Mark. We'll turn to resolution 2014-08, resolution ordering construction of certain public improvement and fixing a date for hearing therein and taking bids thereof. Refer comments and reading of the resolution to City Manager Ron Dunn.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm gonna just have Tom come up and give a brief summary of why we're now kickstarting this and into action.
Okay, if you guys recall, last time I was here, we were ready to go out for bids in the wastewater plant project, but the EPA bonded us out with that Buy American requirement without any conditions or understanding of what is gonna be required in the contract documents. So everybody was recommended to put the project on hold until that came through. We just received an email Monday, I think it was, that said the draft version of that has come from the EPA to the DNR, and the DNR expects by the end of next week that they will have whatever's required to be in the contract documents available. So now it's time for us to get this thing and get it out for bids before it gets too late here. So that's what we're doing right now. We got the bid opening set for April 30th, and we'll bring it to you guys as a committee meeting on May 5th to talk about the results, and then we'll have it at the council meeting on the 8th to get everything finalized.
Any other questions before we start reading?
Okay, let me read this resolution. Resolution 2014-08, a resolution ordering construction of certain public improvements and fixing a date for hearing thereon and taking of bids therefore. Whereas it's deemed advisable and necessary to construct certain public improvements described in general as new wastewater treatment facility project, and has caused to be prepared plan specs and form a contract together with estimated costs, which are now on file in the office of city clerk for public inspection for the construction of public improvements, and the plan specs form a contract are deemed suitable for the making of the public improvements. And whereas before the plan specs form a contract, estimated costs may be adopted if contract for the construction of public improvements is entered into, it's necessary pursuant to Chapter 26 Code of Iowa to hold a public hearing and to advertise for bids. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Hampton, Iowa. Section 1, that it's hereby determined that it's necessary and advisable to construct certain public improvements described as, in general, as a new wastewater treatment facility project in the manner set forth in the plan specs form a contract referred to, the cost thereof to be paid in accordance with the provisions as set out and published notice of hearing and letting. Public improvements being more generally described as follows. Division 1 work, approximately 947 linear feet of 21-inch sanitary sewer, 4,709 linear feet of 24-inch sanitary sewer, 23 manholes and associated restoration. Division 2 work, construction of a mechanical wastewater treatment plant including common neuter, influent pump station, equalization basin, headworks, fluidine SBR system, UV disinfection, infection, lab building, and miscellaneous construction and restoration. Section 2, that the amount of the bid security to accompany each bid shall be in an amount which shall conform to the provisions of the notice to bidders approved as part of the specifications. Be it further resolved that the city clerk be and is hereby directed to publish notice to bidders once in Hampton Chronicle, a legal newspaper printed wholly in English language, published at least once weekly and having general circulation in the city. Publication shall not be less than 4 clear days nor more than 45 days prior to the April 30th, 2014, which is hereby fixed as the date for receiving bids. Bids are to be filed prior to 2:00 p.m. on such date. The City Council hereby delegates to the city manager or his designee the duty of receiving, opening, and tabulating bids for construction of the project. Bids shall be received and opened as provided in the public notice, and the results of the bids shall be considered at the meeting of this council on May 8th, 2014 at 6:00 p.m. Be it further resolved that the city clerk be and is hereby directed to publish notice of hearing once in such newspaper publication to be not less than 4 clear days nor more than 20 days prior to the date herein after fixes the date for a public hearing on the plan specs form a contract estimated cost for the project. Hearing to be at 6:00 p.m. on May 8th, 2014. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Just any notes or comments on this? We stayed on top of this. We dodged a bullet by getting this done. I want to thank City Manager Ron Dunn to continue to work very hard to get this on right now, because if we wouldn't have got it, we wouldn't have gotten the bid in. So I just want to comment. I appreciate staying on top of this. It was very important. I'm looking for a motion.
I make a motion that we approve and adopt resolution 2014-8 dealing with the construction of a new wastewater treatment facility.
And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Diane. Motion by Dick, second by Dan to approve and adopt resolution 2014-08. Any discussion?
Tom, have you seen any of the new, usually you haven't seen any of the
No.
information?
The DNR was allowed 24 hours to review the EPA guidance documents that came down, that was it. And I haven't heard anything from the DNR, one way or the other, what it's all gonna entail, so.
It's windows, we just gotta get in the window, get it out for bid and see what happens.
Yeah, what'll happen is that, we'll be out for bids, and whenever this, because as soon as we'll send out notices to contractors tomorrow, and we'll probably start getting calls for plans as early as Monday. What we'll have to do when we get the final documentation from the DNR is we'll issue an addendum to the project that includes or incorporates that requirement into the contract documents, and then they'll go with it from there. My guess is, based on what we've heard so far, includes certain fabricated metal items. This time they're pretty specific on certain things. They had mentioned rebar, they had mentioned valves, and a few other things. Now, when this happened 5-6 years ago, we had the iJobs program, ARRA thing, they didn't know what they wanted. It's all metal. Now it's a lot more concise, so we'll have a lot more understanding what's going on once we get it.
Will we have any idea on the difference in cost this is going to cost the city
No.
by getting this bid in now?
Unfortunately, no. It's always one of those deals, timing affects costs, requirements such as this Buy American affects costs, and the project schedule affects costs. So what we've done, because we're off on our timing, we would like to have bid this thing in January or February. We're off on our timing, so what we did is we pushed the contract end date back further to hopefully compensate for maybe less than opportunistic time to bid right now. So hopefully we'll make up for that. What we're not gonna ever know is what the ultimate impact is of the Buy American. I mean, we'll just never know what that cost factor was. Maybe someday the EPA will provide some kind of documentation what they thought it was, but we're just not gonna know what that is.
If we're getting bids from people that do these things, everybody put theirs back, right? So really, I don't know.
The cutoff was if you weren't out for bids or didn't have your construction permit by December or January 17th. So anybody that was before that is clear and free and they were bidding. Anybody after that, which is us, is in this situation.
And so really the bid, it's just gonna be basically a number based on what is out there now, but as soon as all these changes come in, the bid's really gonna be, I'm not following when somebody bids a job, but they don't have any idea what they're gonna have to use for materials and.
They'll know that before the job bids, because the documentation will come out next week. The bid opening's not until April 30th.
But it's government, so you're pretty sure that the documentation's gonna.
Yeah, that was one of the questions, and Ron had specifically asked the DNR about that.
That's helpful.
Previously, they're conservative, DNR is very conservative. They had recommended we don't do anything, because they didn't know anything about the timeline. Now the recommendation was, yes, move forward. So, because of how conservative they normally are, and if they're saying to go forward, then I feel really good about the whole thing. Usually if there's even a hint that there's a hang up on this, they're gonna back up and say, don't do anything. So that's not the case right now. So I feel real good about it. We've got a large window yet, because again, we got a month and a half. And the draft is done, it's been reviewed, we're just waiting for the final one, so if it takes them a month and a half or more, then that doesn't say anything good for the government, which was your point, I think. But we should be fine.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Hickman?
Aye.
Davies?
Aye.
Crowley?
Aye.
Uggensmeyer?
Aye.
Arms and Hagebeck are not here, so motion carries. Yes, motion carries. So, thank you very much.
You guys have a great night. Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for your help, Tom.
You bet.
We need a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the following items. Approve the previous minutes of draft Thursday, February 27, 2014 regular session meeting. Approve the previous minutes as drafted for Monday, March 10, 2014 special session meeting, and schedule the next regular session for Thursday, March 27, 2014, 6 p.m. at City Council Chambers. I'll entertain that motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Jim.
Second.
Thank you, Dick. Motion by Jim, second by Dick to approve the consent agenda and the following items. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All against, same sign. Motion passes. Staff reports. Kent here? Not, I'll turn over to Police Chief Bob Schaefer.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, City Manager. Not a whole lot to report other than weather's great. However, it's also uncovering all the garbage and everything else that got covered up by the snow. We have been out there writing up letters for people that do have that out there. So I do encourage you maybe to even call in and let me know, because there might be some that we're missing, whatever. And don't hesitate to call and let us know. Along with that, though, we've also had some scams in the last week. The big one seems to be the green dot card. There's an individual that got called up, and one of them said that they were from Publishers Clearinghouse, said that you'd won, you need to meet, or you need to meet us at Dollar General or whatever. And of course, when they get to Dollar General, then the next call is they want a green dot card. And officer got on the phone and said, this is a scam, quit calling these people. The guy on the other end of the phone told him that he was a scam and he was gonna call his supervisor. So, pretty bold. The other one is that they were with the Homeland Security or whatever, and they told the guy that he needed to go down and get some money. And that one, actually, thanks to the business, they told him that it was a scam, they need to come up to the police department, and it was, so it saved him some money, because he was about ready to go and buy the cards. So, again, if you have any hesitance, call the police department and ask us before you go and actually send the money out. So, okay? Other than that, I don't have anything.
Quick, you had any leads on Ethan at all?
That's coming up the 16th. And no, not any more than what we did, with the dyes and whatever.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief. For comments to Doug Tarr, Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mayor. First and foremost, just want to get this out. This is great for media's here. Keep checking your water temperatures. We're still at a high risk. We're actually at a higher risk this week than we probably were a couple months ago. As this warm weather is occurring, frost is driving down quite a bit. We have done some excavating and we're down there. We're gonna need a good solid week to 2 weeks of these anywhere from 35 to 50 degree temperatures. Just the frost was just that deep this year. Continues that way. So I just want to remind folks, keep doing it. Just because it's nice outside doesn't mean you're not in danger, and let's do that. The other thing is and I put this in my report, but you're gonna get some impatient citizens. They're gonna say, I want my alley maintained. It's horrible. I got ruts. The garbage truck's been through it. This, that, or the other. As we do every spring. That happens a lot every spring, and basically we know that it's not going to do us any good to go out and try to maintain an alley at this point. Our equipment will sink out of sight in some instances, or it'll sink down to where it hits the hard frost. Putting rock in the alley is not going to do us much good, because until that frost is completely out and it's dried up a little bit, any rock that we do is just going to swoosh down into Never Land, and it's kind of it's just not fiscally reasonable, I don't think. But I just want to let you aware of that. It's not that